Over the past few years, everything has changed. Where and how we work and live, the way we collaborate and measure success, and the emerging technologies we use to get it all done. Welcome to The Bridge. Join our host, Scott Kinka, in a series of discussions with top leaders in technology and learn about how they bridge their lives and their businesses into our new hybrid work and AI-driven reality. Our hope is that the insights and experiences will help you on your journey in business and in life from who we were to who we are today. And maybe it'll help you get better prepared for whatever comes next. The Bridge is a service of Bridgepoint Technologies, the nation's leading IT advisory firm. Bridgepoint helps business leaders evaluate, procure, implement, and manage technology and customer experience solutions with a focus on realizing sustainable results for your business growth. And now, here's your host, Scott Kinka.
Do you guys remember early 2000s hosting support? It went something like this. Hello, support. My server's running slow. Support answers, why is that? Me, well, that's why I'm calling you. Support, well, the server's up. Thanks for calling. Click. This is a completely different kind of denial of service attack, isn't it? If you're not smart enough to run the server, you shouldn't have one, right? There are two types of IT people in this world. There's the do-it-yourselfers who will buy it off the rack and figure it out. And there's everyone else. And here's a big hint. There's a lot more IT people in the everyone else camp. That's the group that Rackspace was focused on when they coined the phrase fanatical support in the early 2000s, a phrase that is still attached to them 20 plus years later. Google it. My guest on this episode of The Bridge is Jeff DeVerter. He's the CTO of products and services at Rackspace. We caught up live at Channel Partners in Las Vegas, and we talked about a lot of things, the history of Rackspace, but also AI, autonomous weapons, whether Microsoft is friend or foe to a business like theirs. But mostly, we talked about customers and how they consume technology and how we, as technologists, get consumed by our tech. Oftentimes, not the customer's needs. Don't get too invested in shiny balls. Get invested in your customers. And get invested in this program. If you like what you hear today, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and give us a rating or review. It certainly helps us to continue the work that we're doing and bringing content like this to your earbuds. So, without further delay, here's my in-person conversation with Jeff DeVerter, CTO of Products and Services at Rackspace. So welcome to The Bridge. We have a special Las Vegas episode that we're about to embark on. I am here today with Jeff DeVerter, who is the CTO of Products and Services for Rackspace. Welcome, Jeff.
I'm so glad to be here. This is fun to get to do it live.
It's so rare.
I know. There's always a screen. There's always something going on. But no, you're right there.
Yeah. I mean, we were just commenting on how simple doing this was from a technology perspective.
Right.
Jeff, we're here in Las Vegas.
Yeah, we are.
Tell everybody why we're here in Las Vegas.
Well, we're here for Channel Partners. I don't know how many years this has been going on, but several decades. And but you know what? It's my first time to the show.
Seriously.
Can you believe that?
It's about my 847th time in the show, or at least it feels like that. But you already figured out the key to Channel Partners.
Yeah.
It's about the footwear.
Oh, it is about the footwear, isn't it?
It is about the footwear. So are these are custom Rackspace?
These are custom design Nike Air Force Ones, and so I had a local artist in San Antonio do these. I gave him this Word document of 3 pages of Rackspace lore and logo and stuff. And so you can't see all the things, but the original Rackspace logos there, the Fanatic guys down there. I've got the initials for the 3 founders of Rackspace, plus Lanham Napier, who is our first CEO, and then Graham Weston was the angel investor.
There's a lot more thinking to those shoes than I thought.
There's a lot into these shoes. And then I got other feet too. The current logo. Oh, it was this one I wanted to show you. So that right down there, really cool fanatical. Because, for Rackspace,
fanatical support,
fanatical experience. It's, helping customers transform their business through the magic of multi-cloud.
Got it. So my shoes are not nearly as interesting, but I am wearing my Bridgepoint socks, which is a staple for us as we get in here. So
I like it.
It is all about the foot fit here at Channel Partners.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we were able to get this in. Jeff, you are not only the CTO for products and services,
Yeah.
but you're also on the Forbes Tech Council. Will you
I
tell our listeners a little bit about Forbes Tech Council?
Yeah, Forbes Tech Council is super interesting. So you know Forbes to be this publication mecca, and they've got stuff in print, they got stuff online, they've got audio and video stuff that comes out as well. But they also have some sub communities, we could call them, around different major topics. And one of those, of course, being technology. And so I've been nominated and was part of that. And so which means I get to publish some content there about every 6 weeks. I'll get a new article out there. Got one in the hopper right now. Takes a little while to get them through their approval process because it's pretty stringent. But so they got to get my words through there, which makes it take longer.
Right.
But if you haven't gone out to Forbes, Forbes.com and search on the Tech Council, there is some great. It's a great community of authors out there.
So we'll make sure to get down in the show notes. A link for our listeners. We have a lot that come in from YouTube, so a good spot to put all that good information.
Fantastic.
So before we get into Rackspace, because a company with an interesting history through a couple of versions of the internet, right?
Almost a quarter decade.
I mean, crazy.
Can you believe that? 25 years.
Crazy. Okay, we're going to explore
it's 24, but I round up.
We're going to explore 24 years, but tell us a little bit about Jeff first.
Sure.
Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah. So again, I'm Jeff DeVerter. I work over at Rackspace. I've been there since 2008. I did leave for not quite 2 years. Went over to CloudReach for a little while. Thought I would try a smaller, cloud native MSP. And that was a fun ride. But the gravity of Rackspace was pretty strong. And in 2020, came back because I thought, I miss all these people. I miss the castle. It's what we call our corporate headquarters.
Okay.
We call it that because it's in an old mall. Now it doesn't look like a mall once you get inside. It used to be called the Windsor Park Mall, so we call it the castle.
The castle.
And so I get back there. It's January of 2020. It's like, hey, I get to be around people. Like it's March, and so everybody goes home.
So that's interesting. So you call it the castle. It's about getting to this place. Are you all back, or is it a different version of back now than it was than you were expecting?
That's a great question. So everybody now talks about work being hybrid. And that definition for what that is different for different people and different organizations. I've seen some that say, hey, we want people in 2 or 3 days a week. If you're in leadership, you're more than not. And we had a big, strong push for bringing people back into the office last summer. And so that brought back in, several hundred on any given day.
Okay.
That building is built for thousands.
Yeah.
It still felt like a cavern, an empty cavern. Because when you think about the amount of people we hired in those couple of years, we didn't put any restrictions on where they could be. I mean, coming back to an office would be a foreign concept. I mean, from Idaho, from Montana.
Right. Exactly. And there's great people there.
And I would rather them continue working for Rackspace and be remote than the opposite of that.
So did you settle on anything different after you realized that it was a cavernous? Like, are you trying to bring people in on certain days so that it's a little bit more
changing facilities. We're actually going to sell that facility, and we're under construction in a new one that'll hold, I think a maximum about 500, which still sounds like a lot. But as opposed to, the space where we were, literally 1.2 million square feet, just to put it into reference.
Also, from a timing perspective, nice to be able to think about, and reimagine kind of what is office now.
That's exactly right. Yeah, so office used to be this place where you went to do your work.
Yeah.
And it's not anymore. Not that you don't work there, but it's a place where you more come to work together.
With others, yeah.
You come to learn, you come to team build, you come to strategize. There are some great online tools. Nothing beats a whiteboard that's as long as your wall.
I agree. And
you can just get some things done in those environments that's hard to otherwise.
A phrase I love, I don't even mind quoting one of our other guests. He's Gary Sorrentino at Zoom, and he said, we're going to do this. Let's earn our employees' commute.
Wow.
Right, which is a kind of an
That's
interesting
a
way of
great
thinking
line.
about it, right?
It's a great line, especially from Zoom.
Yeah, well, what was interesting about that conversation, and I'll parlay it into a question for you, right? Which is I always like to ask, do you have, as a company, do you have hybrid work? Do you think you have hybrid work figured out? Don't answer it yet. Because I asked that question of Gary, and here you are, Zoom, right? On Collab, we're very well known, kind of a verb in the pandemic about hybrid work. And he looked at me, he was like, hell no.
Yeah.
If we did, we wouldn't be innovating on the product.
Right.
We're trying to solve our own problems,
right.
Which is a really interesting way of thinking about it.
Yeah. So my answer to that would be no, because if you figure it out, if you say you figured it out, then that assumes that there is an endpoint. And to your previous comment
Yeah.
is, I think that this is a space that will continue to evolve as technology evolves. Think about augmented reality. I think that's going to play a really big part of it. There's some really
Sure.
interesting things happening, just even in creative design of spaces, that is enabling a hybrid, meeting experience that's uniquely different. So, do we have it figured out for the environment that we have today and the technology we have today? I say it's working.
Yeah.
I say it's working, but at the moment you go to sleep, the technology changes.
Totally. So let me ask the question a different way. You know, you said effectively we'll never have it figured out, right?
Right.
But would we be here now if not for the pandemic?
No.
Okay.
And I'm quick on that answer too.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't have to think about it.
So here's what I want to, I'm going back to the shoes. I'm going back to the shoes. Where is it? Right here. See that? See that? That's the logo for SharePoint. That is how, it's why I came to Rackspace. I came to start what we call our dedicated or single tenant SharePoint offering, which means at my heart, I'm a collaboration guy.
Yeah.
From the way back forever. And that means that I'm focused on how do people work better together.
Yeah.
And so I think that there is infinite opportunity for how that can be better.
Let's use that as a little bit of a stepping off point.
All right.
And let's talk a little bit about Rackspace. There's been a couple generations of Rackspace, but I think all fanatically taking care of customers. There's been that common thread throughout.
Yeah.
But maybe tell us a little bit about who Rackspace is today. And then, give us a little bit of the legacy.
Yeah, I can't tell you who Rackspace is today if I don't tell you the history first.
Certainly.
And so Rackspace started as a leader. Well, I can't even say a leader in managed hosting, because when we started in 1998, there was no such thing as managed hosting.
Yeah.
There was hosting, but managed hosting is easily defined as we had data centers, we had servers, and we had smart people. And with that, we built $1 billion business.
Yeah.
And the home of Fanatical support. And you may not know this story, but I'll tell you where Fanatical came from, Fanatical experience. You see the founders right there, founders of Rackspace. It all goes back to the footwear.
You're right. Exactly.
You're right, at channel partners. So the founders of Rackspace really had, in the earliest of days, this is 99, 2000, their support was what we call denial of service support. Meaning they didn't want to support it. Their mindset really was, if you're not smart enough to run the server, you shouldn't have one in the first place.
Sure.
But at some point, some poor guy got through on the phone to somebody and explained the fact that because they couldn't make the server do what it needed to do, their business couldn't function.
Yeah.
And isn't that the same story today? And
it totally is.
And so he explains it. And this leader, now mind you, there's like 25 people in the company. They're working at card tables in an office at high-rise down in San Antonio. And he stands up and he says, we have got to give these people a fanatical experience with their technology. And that was where it started.
That was where it came from.
That's where it came from.
It's really interesting when you think about that in the vein of the time frame that you're talking about now. We're late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah. We all know what happened in 2000. I have always felt like the idea that customers were self-sufficient contributed a lot to kind of where we landed in the economy in the dot-com bust, because it was very much like, hey, if we're in SaaS, we should never have to talk to another human.
That's right.
I sold a license. The license is operating. I don't care if you use it. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Does that kind of share is that sort of along the lines of the fanatical support experience you're talking about?
Really, it was. And so that was a pivotal change in Rackspace. You could probably go back to, I've never done it, but go back to that date, whatever it was, and look at Rackspace's financials. And you couldn't see them because we weren't public then. Yeah. But I could. Well, I can't. But I think it would be interesting because at that point, Rackspace's focus changed, and it has become part of our DNA, and I think it's part of our success. I know it's part of our success. Because when you get away, that you guys weren't on, before we pushed the record button, Gene and I are geeking out over all kinds of microphones and lighting and great, because we're geeks and we love gear. But the reality is most of the rest of the world could care less about it. They just want their flower shop, their bakery, their enterprise to run more efficiently and help things. And if technology gets in the way, then technology is an impediment to that mission. And at no time more than right now, regardless of whether a company has opportunities or challenges, technology is at the heart of the solution. Yeah. If it's not the entire solution. It's at least it's a significant piece of it, which means then when we go back and think about we've got to give folks a fanatical experience, that means let's translate that from lore to reality. And that means that we've got to get the technology at a point where it accelerates the business for the business's sake, not for technology's sake.
100% about business outcomes.
Yes.
I mean, the negative about being a geek in this space is that we want all the shiny toys, right? We want all the shiny balls.
But we get excited in the morning of what changed. We go look at,
100%.
aws.com/updates.
Yeah, right. And ultimately, though, the risk is that it becomes about so many people here are channel partners, right? The biggest show in our industry for the indirect distribution of all of the technology companies that all of the listeners of this pod engage with on a day-to-day basis. And we're here. And I walk around on the show floor and I watch the mistakes. And I'm like, everything that you're saying is making it about your widgets, not about what your widgets actually deliver to a business. What's the outcome?
If you're making your customer think through that sort of stuff, if you're an IT decision maker, you've got money to spend and you got a salesperson who shows up and is giving you a speeds and feeds conversation when you're not asking for speeds, there's a place for speeds and feeds.
There certainly is.
But at the beginning of it, if they're coming in and saying, my device is shinier, faster, blinkier, as opposed to my device can create these outcomes for your business, then I would challenge you made it. Don't talk about
Or worse yet, if the my shiny balls are shinier and then attach the litany of, whatever the hot terms in the market are today.
Oh, yeah.
Right? We're based on microservices today, or we're like, which I get.
Here's our container-based solution.
Right? Well, I'm sure you've dealt with a lot of that over a long period of time at Rackspace. So tell us now, so you started with, Rackspace. So, and for those of you who are thinking back to now, 97, 98, 99, we're literally talking about like
space in
Dell 1U pizza boxes in racks.
That's right.
Farmed out to individuals. They get a login to it. My data center, not yours.
Yeah.
Then somebody raises their hand and says, I just don't know what to do with that thing. Rackspace decides that you're going to make it about fanatical support.
Yeah.
So now here we are. It's,
right. So
20 some odd years later.
Right. Well, let's move through. There's another era to go through. So this is early 2000s, and then we realized we can turn that into what becomes managed hosting, because it's not just about the server blinking, it's about the server functioning.
Yeah.
So the way that I translate that is Rackspace could make Windows and Linux servers run better at Rackspace than they could run anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
Backed up, available, tuned, hardened, all of the stuff that matters. And so that takes us through the 2000s. In fact, that's what pulls me into Rackspace, because I'm the SharePoint guy.
Yeah.
And the SharePoint guy comes in and says, you have award-winning things and certifications around Windows, and around SQL, and around Active Directory. In fact, Microsoft says you do that better than anywhere else. That's the foundation of SharePoint. So let's build an offering around that. That's how I came to Rackspace. And not long after I'd been to Rackspace, now we're a decade into Rackspace, and Rackspace is starting to look around at all this gear that now, they've upgraded for customers. We got all this leftover stuff, and they team up with some friends at NASA, and they say, let's make a cloud. At this point in time, AWS, Amazon's been selling books. I don't even think they've gone into general retail at this point.
Got it.
And they say, let's take this service that we sell books on and make it something people could buy. I think there were like 2 VMs you could buy, maybe a little storage, not much. And so it's literally Rackspace and Amazon at this point in history, which is fascinating to think about. And but our cloud is one that was built and helped operate the same stuff that runs a lot of the NASA things. So we built that with NASA. The OpenStack environment, it became our public cloud. It became private cloud stuff for people. And so that takes us from, call it, late 2000s into the teens, probably up to around 13, 14. And we get a good run out of that and realize that with Rackspace's, millions of dollars we're spending in research.
Yeah.
Compared to what Amazon was spending, and Microsoft now is starting to spend, because Azure didn't exist. Google still doesn't exist as a cloud service. You realize we should partner more than we should compete.
100%. Yeah.
And so that really began in 2017 is when we launched our partnership with AWS.
Okay.
And we went from, in March, it was a serious drive. No, it was before 17. It was before that. It was 15. there was a serious drive to get certifications. We went from like nobody certified in March in AWS to more certified architects than AWS had at the time.
So did you do like a bounty program?
Oh, 100%.
It was one of those like, who's
Oh,
got the cert today?
Oh my gosh, we had admins who they weren't architects.
Of course.
Getting stuff, but oh, absolutely.
That's tremendous.
Yeah, and on the heels of that, we launched the Azure offering. On the heels of that, then Google invites us to be one of the first MSPs on their platform. And so now we're in this world where we have our own public cloud. We support all the other public clouds, and we have our own data centers. And that puts us in this world where we realized, we were forced into this realization because we have all these employees and all these tech people who are looking after our customers. Well, our customers start having more than one set of resources.
Yeah,
they've got the stuff with us. Maybe they're dabbling in our public cloud, and now they're dabbling in somebody else's private cloud, and our engineers are supporting all these workloads. What do? I mean, where are the tickets? Where are the monitors? And they got to pay attention. So we start to build some internal technology that really just helped our rackers be able to serve them better. And it's become the core service layer that allows us to support what we call support multi-cloud. And that's to be able to know what existed when, where all the tickets are, single portal to get into everything, single RBAC for all the cloud environments. We call it Rackspace Fabric, and it is one of our core, what I call our somewhat secret sauce.
Yeah.
Although we tell anybody who wants to know about it, because.
But say more specifically, you guys grew up sort of building services on top of your infrastructure.
Yeah.
And the latest turn on this is you're effectively saying our cloud, your cloud, their cloud. We're going to build the services tier, the fanatical services support tier that's been in the DNA forever, and work across the multiple tiers. As you go there.
And what it was really driven by is, we had to turn the mirror on ourselves. We just kind of made lambasted people who say it's all about the tech. We had a lot of really technical people who love to talk about the tech.
Yeah.
And we needed to then talk about business outcomes enabled by any infrastructure solution. Because we could support infrastructure in a customer data center, in a Rackspace data center, where we still have over 30 of them all around the world, or in the hyperscales. And we still have our public cloud. That's still humming away over there.
Yeah.
More than capable. I'm not saying I put it up against Azure, AWS, or Google. But it does create choices and options so that we can then say, technology aside, what are you trying to do? What are the outcomes you're trying to drive? Are you trying to hire more people? Are you trying to understand things? Are you trying to get a handle on your data? That's a really huge conversation we have these days. ChatGPT has opened the eyes to the world that AI is not a science project, but a reality. And everybody wants to ask questions of their data. And so that is creating all sorts of opportunity around data projects, because the data's got to be clean before you can do that sort of work.
Well, and the processing power to drive AI is exponential.
It is.
In terms of its use of processing and and which ultimately then drives power and ends up driving. So all of that, pulling forward is a super interesting part of the conversation. I want to just slide back for a minute.
Yeah, we're bouncing around.
Yeah,
so
which is great. No, that's okay. On the, you came in SharePoint.
Yeah.
And then you talked about you guys being in hosting, and then ultimately Azure was one of the clouds that you were managing. I'm often asked, I'm in a distribution and I'm in an advisory and consulting business role now, but I spend a lot of time on the supplier side, and on the technology vendor side, if you will. And I'm always asked the question, Microsoft friend or foe? And I'll come back to my response on that in a minute. But I'm curious, having kind of gone, you've had a couple of businesses that you were sort of in, hosting. One of them, they've eaten a little bit of lunch maybe and pulled some people over there, but then you're managing. Answer that question for me. As a service provider that's not, you're not Microsoft, but you transact around Microsoft. Friend or foe on this stuff? I know it's an overly simplistic question, and I'm partly doing it for effect, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
So I spent I would call it that, my first decade at Rackspace was all in the Microsoft ecosystem. So I launched our SharePoint offering, our single tenant exchange offering, what was Link or Skype, whatever, for business. And then our private cloud running on Hyper-V, I said hyperscale, Hyper-V, and then our Azure offering. So I was all in those things. And now I look after all things. So there's really, short answer.
Depends on the time,
short answer,
right?
friend.
Yeah, sure.
but you want to think of them as your enemy.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is keep your who is it?
Your friends close and your enemies closer.
That's the
right?
that's literally the line I'm going for, because you really want to understand. You have to understand that as a technologist, you're gravitated to talk to the technologist inside of, in this case, Microsoft. And so, and the technologists want to talk the tech and want to adopt the tech. But at the end of the day, Microsoft is a for-profit organization who is in the business of creating a profit. Mm-hmm. So it is vitally important that you keep that as a viewpoint, understanding that you have to make sure that your business is getting the right business outcomes from your chosen tech. Now, I say also friend, because there's nobody easier to get your email and all the collaboration stuff through. There's no easier way to do Teams chatting and integrating that into the whole workflow. When you add the whole Power Suite into all of that, you now create some very fascinating automation. Now with ChatGPT being baked into all of that stuff as well, you can now start to ask some really interesting questions. It's not just about a Power BI output, but now you can say, I can see that sales were down in March, but why were sales? I literally ask the question, why were sales down? And it'll tell you.
So interesting. I'll answer the question slightly different way.
Okay.
We agree. But I think, the interesting part, you mentioned SharePoint, you mentioned single tenant exchange hosting, and in the back of your mind, from a business protection perspective, you're like, we entered a business around their software. We build a hosting offering around it. Effectively, they put us out of that business, right? But the one thing that has always been interesting to me about Microsoft is their clarity of vision in terms of how far they want to go in support, right? So in a lot of ways, to me, it feels a lot like the fanatical support conversation earlier. Like, their model on most of this stuff is still very much like the Rackspace model pre the fanatical support discussion, right? Which is like, hey, listen, here's all the tools. Yeah, here's all the tools.
Have fun storming the castle.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So for me, yes, if you're in the business, which I've been a couple times in my career, obviously you have a couple times even at Rackspace, of sort of taking software and then monetizing it to service. Yes, competitive risk always with them, right? But you just know that they never want to take a phone call from a customer at the end of the day if they can avoid it. So there's this tier of do something with my tools that's always going to live there,
right?
I think is sort of the way I think about it.
Yeah, I think I would caveat one tiny piece on that. And the tiny piece would be, at the end of the day, they want you to be successful. Because if you can't be successful, they can't sell you that license again. And the story that I tell about that, my friend Kent Kingery, if he's watching this, knows this well. It's back to the early days of SharePoint. I hadn't even come to Rackspace yet. I'm at a large financial services organization in San Antonio. And we have deployed SharePoint 2007. And we have the book.
Yeah,
they didn't write it. It was a third-party book, but it was written with Microsoft stuff.
Don't use their documentation.
And I don't even remember what the problem was. It's a Friday afternoon. And the thing isn't working, and part of the whole thing is down because the thing isn't working. Into the book we go, and we literally get to the page where it says, and here's how you're supposed to solve this problem. And in parentheses, it says, check with Ashish. Meaning it didn't get through editing where they didn't take that out and actually put the content in. So we're stuck. We get on the phone with Microsoft. We escalate. And they finally get this guy. All right, I know the engineer to call. He's in the car. We're going to call him and conference him in because this is 2000.
Tell me his name's not Ashish.
It was Ashish. We had Ashish on the call. And Kent and I are literally there. We're like, it's Ashish.
It's the guy.
It's the guy.
From the book.
And it did solve the problem. So that was good.
Right.
But I'll say that. So push come to shove, they want it to work. They do not want to talk to you. That's why they have partners. And it begs the next question that you might want to ask. And that would be, well, in a world of how Rackspace has evolved, where does an MSP sit as we come in and we have this fancy single tenant SharePoint thing that literally has been decommissioned at Rackspace because nobody wants it. Nor should they.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'll say, nor
should
they.
Service. But meanwhile, people still don't know what the hell to do with SharePoint.
That's right. It's still a gold mine if you're looking for a business to get into. Right, Shane Young?
Right.
So when you think about Rackspace's beginning and that fanatical support experience, I love how we keep going back to that as the anchor. And we said, look, we can make the operating system run better at Rackspace than it can anywhere else. Now you get to where we are in a cloud-based world where we don't think about that. We just deploy a new one if something goes blank, because in a single line of script, off it goes. So what happens as all of this evolution occurs inside of technology, whether it's from not in your data center to a Rackspace data center to a managed hosting to a cloud to containers to serverless to software as a service. Well, there's always going to be a need for somebody who is going to connect the business outcome to the technology, regardless of where the
100%.
tech is.
Yeah.
Now, the people who are still in business, who are still thriving, are the ones who say, maybe it just doesn't matter if the operating system runs well. Because at the end of the day, right today, it kind of doesn't.
Yeah.
There's technology that fixes that automatically. And we use a ton of it at Rackspace.
Sure.
We solve over 80% of our tickets, either system generated or customer or Racker generated through automation. Just because we've seen the problem before, we know how to solve the problem, and an automated system can go solve that.
Yeah. You're right. It's funny how the entire conversation has come back to that, macro level conversation about that moment when you all decided that you weren't hosting pizza boxes, but you were taking care of customers.
That's right.
As the turn.
Yeah.
Right there. Yeah, it's just really wild. We talk about business outcomes all the time. In our business, that's really the focus. We're like, don't get so invested in the shiny balls. Right. Get invested in the customer, and then we'll bring the tool set, to be there. And again, just kind of answering on the Microsoft side of the house, it's definitely to me, it's been that clarity of, it's just been that clarity of message. Like, hey, listen, $9 is made in the ecosystem on every dollar. I don't know if I believe the numbers. You can make numbers say whatever you want, but at least their story is somebody makes $9 on every dollar we make.
That's right.
In and around the ecosystem.
It's a true number.
And they don't want at those services at all. And there's a place to live. It's that gap. There's always a gap. When I meet with customers and I say to them, I'm like, look, you can be as well-intentioned as possible. Yeah. But there's always a gap between where the person you bought the tech from ends and where you want to start begins.
That's right.
Right. And and that's where the managed services providers live, where the consultants live. It's in that.
Now, as the technology gets smarter, the gap still exists, just farther upstack.
Just get smart.
Right.
The ability to fill this just basically becomes more specialist skill set.
That's right. So as you think about your career, and there's a lot of people worried right now, especially if you're a coder, what's happening with everything around generative AI. Yeah. Because it's writing some pretty fantastic code. Is there still a position for a developer in the future? My answer is yes. I think we'll have just as many developers in the future. They're just going to be more productive.
100%. So
my challenge then to anybody watching who's worried about, what happens to my career as either AI does things or Microsoft or Google come along and create, what used to take my skills, now they do it as a service. All right, well, where's the next window? Just move up to the next window. Be flexible.
Will we be prepared, however, getting back, I'm going to cycle this all the way back to the early conversation about being ready for hybrid work.
Yeah.
Right. Will we be ready as business leaders to evaluate our employees, and in this case, our developers' success based on output or hard work? Like, is the developer who can churn out twice as many lines of code in 2 hours a day more valuable than the person who was the first person in and the last person to leave, just given our our Cold War mentality about how we work?
I'm watching a video this morning on for the guy they call the godfather of AI. He just left Google out of some concerns over there.
Yeah.
And he made an interesting statement in that interview. It was a CBS This Morning interview. You can find it. But he said, well, you're ultimately asking a question, developer productivity. What is productivity?
Yeah.
Productivity is a math equation. It equals the amount that gets done divided by the number of hours that it takes to get that done.
Totally.
So if you think about that, I don't care when somebody shows up. If you work for me, look, I just put myself as the boss. If you work for me and you're a developer, and your job is to write this chunk of code, and I'm going to give you a timeline that's going to make me happy about that, and you can meet that, job well done.
Yeah, brisk.
Yeah,
right.
And if you get it done faster, then I'm consistently, then I may have some questions, not because you're in trouble, but because it's gold star. Now, how do we take that and use it elsewhere?
Well, look, in the smarts, I think one of the big misnomers about the current state of AI, particularly in sort of generative AI, is that you can ask it a terrible question and get a good answer. I mean, the reality of it is the smarts still need to be in the development team to get the output that you require. Yeah. For now.
I'm a little concerned.
Okay. All right. Well, then maybe there's a good bridge, because this has been a great conversation.
Yeah.
I promised you I was going to get you back to your next appointment and on time. And we'll continue this.
Yeah.
Certainly. We'll continue this dialogue another time. But let me do this, and I think I know where your answer may be, or at least in the category where it may be. Get your crystal ball out. Give me a shameless Jeff prediction for sometime in the next 18 to 24 months?
About AI stuff?
About anything.
Anything.
But I think you'll land in AI unless you're going to pick like your
So
favorite
do you
sports
want to
team
do you
wins the
want something
championship.
that's interesting and sexy, or do you want something that is mass market?
I think whatever you're very sure of. Get behind whatever you're going to say.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter which bucket it's in.
I think we're in the middle of a great awakening.
Okay.
And that great awakening is, you asked me a question earlier, and we didn't really dance too much on it. And that
Okay.
was, could any of the stuff that's happening right now have happened without the
Yeah.
pandemic?
Okay.
And my answer to that was no.
Mhm.
And the reason for that answer was ultimately because it was a catalyst.
Yeah.
Because I was a collaboration person from the very beginning, and collaboration was a solution looking for a problem.
Mhm.
And that problem was everybody having to go work from home.
Yeah.
And at that point, everybody said, oh, we like video meetings now. Every meeting is a video meeting.
Yeah.
And it now becomes a core competency. Now we're figuring out how to do that in a hybrid context a little bit. So there's some new
Sure.
muscles. Because and the other thing that we had to do as part of that was get our data in a place where everyone had access to it. Before, it was tucked neatly inside of our
Yeah.
organizations behind firewalls. That didn't work when we all went home.
Mhm.
So every IT person got out their snow shovel and just started heaving it out into a cloud of choice. And that creates opportunity. So now I think IT leaders are looking at their organization and going, the way we've done it we don't have to do it that way anymore.
Yeah.
There are options. There's tooling, there's technology that creates opportunity, because what we've done up until now is we've put technology around our existing processes.
Yeah.
Now I think we're starting to analyze those processes and tear them apart.
Different way to do
And
it.
that's why I think it's a great awakening for how business happens.
Got it.
And I think it creates one of the best opportunities to be in IT.
When you started that answer with the Great Awakening, I thought you were going to stay on the AI bent.
Yeah.
And I was getting a dystopian future robots taking the world over answer, which so many people have a fear of in AI. That's we don't have the time to explore that one together. But
We
is
don't.
the singularity near, Jeff?
Is it near? Well, here's how you know when it will be.
Okay.
When you hit what's called runaway AI. And runaway AI defined by AI that can improve itself.
Yeah.
Through code, through knowledge. By the way, AI right now is built on data that we give it.
Mm-hmm.
But AI is starting to create its own data. And it is testing its algorithms based on its data. And it's choosing what's good data and what's bad data. And what's good, it then improves itself on. So are we getting close? I would sign that letter that Elon and others have signed that said, that didn't say take things out of market, but it said anything past GPT-4, we just need a pause.
Yeah.
We need a pause.
I find that we constantly have this kind of life imitating art versus art imitating life conversation about AI sometimes on these episodes, right? Which is because I find it so interesting that the whole Elon letter about GPT-4 and where we're at and taking a pause, it goes back to science fiction written in the 30s and 40s, right? The immutable laws and like all of this stuff, it was in the 60s and 70s, all over Star Trek, kind of crazy stuff.
And here we are.
I think that here we are.
And here we are. And the immutable laws actually don't work real well either.
Oh, totally.
Because when you think about, they say they're not doing it, but do I trust them? I don't know. That autonomous lethal weapon systems.
Yeah.
What happens when the goal of the autonomous lethal weapon system is to get the bad guy over there?
Yeah.
Immutable laws all of a sudden don't work anymore.
Totally. And more movies. We could just keep going. We wrote our own future, by the way, in Hollywood, right?
And here's your last stat.
Yeah.
The last stat is that 50% of the heavy thinkers in AI right now say there's a 10% chance that it will cause the extinction of the human race.
I heard that stat. It's a pretty amazing one.
IT.
And we're going to leave it to dwell, and then I'm going to rapid fire 2 questions at you, and I'm going to get you back to the show floor.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So here it is. So the robot apocalypse occurs, and you have your phone in your pocket.
Yep.
Only one app continues to function. What is it?
Ooh.
What's your end of the world app?
Instagram's not very interesting anymore.
Okay.
I have some property in Texas where I'm going to actually retreat to and go farm and not worry about technology.
Okay.
So I won't even turn it on anymore.
Okay. So your one app is turning it off. It's the off button.
Is the off button.
That's possibly one of the most interesting answers we've gotten.
It's the off button.
The last one. And just
You're obviously a very learned guy. We bounced all over the place today. Is there something on your end table that you're reading right now, or maybe on the reader that you want our listeners to take a peek at? Where's your brain right now?
So I've read it. It was about a year ago, but I continue to recommend the book. If you're familiar with the New York Times author Nicole Perloff, she wrote a book. She covered cybersecurity for over a decade, all the Snowden stuff, and she wrote a book called "This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends."
Okay. You know, I'm ordering it this afternoon and I'm reading it on my iPad.
It's for the ride home. Absolutely. It is. It's compelling. It's a story-driven thing. It talks about zero-day stuff.
Yeah.
And it's eye-opening.
Well, Jeff, we could continue. This has been eye-opening and fun, and we bounced all over the place, which I loved, and I was hoping we could do. And I'm so glad we did it in person.
So much more fun.
Staring at each other on a screen, which makes this awesome. So listen, first of all, thank you. Thank you for the partnership. As our listeners undoubtedly have figured out, you know, Bridgepoint and Rackspace are partnered. We go solve business problems together out there in the field.
Our biggest 2022 partner.
Let's do that right on camera. I love that we were able to do that right here. And, you know, we're thrilled to have you. We'll love to have you back. My guest has been Jeff DeVerter, who is from Rackspace, CTO of Products and Services. He's got the shoes to show it. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for the invite. This was great.
Awesome. Thank you.
Listen, if you made it this far, there must have been some good content, or you're just a fan or a relative of mine. In either case, we appreciate you spending your most valuable asset with us, your time. We don't take that lightly. We'd also like to say one more time that we are appreciative of Bridgepoint Technologies and their belief and sponsorship of the show. We hope that if you or someone you know is thinking about your company's digital transformation, or simply the next IT project that you may not have the resources, budget, or time to get to, I'm sure that Bridgepoint, one of the country's fastest growing technology advisory and procurement firms, can help. Check out Bridgepoint at bridgepointtechnologies.com. Don't forget the E on Bridgepoint, or simply reach out to me at Skinka, SKINKA, at bpt3.net. Also, take a minute, please, if you would, to give us a 5-star review on your favorite platform. It helps give us the visibility to reach other people like you. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bridge. I am Scott Kinka, and until next time, there's a lot of noise out there. In business and in life, do what you can to be the signal. Thanks.